So it takes almost a full minute before that baby, that very cute baby and very kind of creepy baby, to enter the film. So it's all about Tinny for that first minute. But that baby's entrance is signaled off screen by faint baby noises that catch Tinny's attention. His attention shifts away from the TV and towards the doorway, and the moment is punctuated by the plume on top of Tinny's hat wobbling in surprise. And I have to give a quick shout out to my friend Sarah Shackett, who told me that that plume is a plume and not a poof. But I will kind of forever miss the days where I referred to it as a poof. But it's very technically called a plume. So thank you, Sarah. Um, and that plume, like I said, will be the most expressive part of Tinny and functions the same way that Luxo Jr.'s wiggle functions. It gives Tinny a quirk and a personality. And this is in addition to his face and elaborate body with the band attached to him. It is a moment of Pixar maintaining what worked um, when, sorry, when there were limitations, even when those limitations could have been lifted. So we don't really need such an expressive body part at this point because, like I'll say in a second, they've mastered faces, so they can have expressive faces, but they keep it and it gives him all the more personality. It kind of shows that it's not just a fix for a technical problem, it's a real storytelling element. Um, and so, like, just as Luxo and Junior could have kind of settled being stock characters, Tinny could just use his face to exhibit emotions, and we wouldn't really have a problem with that. We'd understand it, it would make sense. But we've also seen that in older cartoons. If you watch older cartoons, they express via faces. It makes a lot of sense. But that plume makes him unique. And our attention, however, so we get the plume, we get Tinny's personality, and then our attention shifts. And that's when the baby enters. And he enters through an empty doorway, and what is going to come through it. So in this case, it is Pixar's creative and technical team's first attempt at a human figure. Lumpy's status as a clown kind of disqualifies him. This is their first attempt at a genuine human figure. And so they don't really it's a big experiment. And so while they put a lot of effort into him and he is a technical marvel, he's also eerily realistic. And at the same time, while it's a technical marvel for the time, it's still really limited. And his appearance, therefore, comes across as really lumpy and awkward, just like the clown. And one way that Pixar kind of salvages this is that they have a real baby voice in. So we are seeing what this could be, kind of a monstrous figure, but we're hearing a real baby, so we start to kind of treat him as such. And from this point forward, the soundtrack is kind of full of that baby babble, reminding the audience of the adorable and innocent nature of this monster. I feel awful. I give this baby a lot of flack, but he is a baby still. And Tinny's first reaction to the baby is kind of an appropriate, natural joy at this cute creature. And there's an exchange of shots of Tinny observing the baby as the baby gets settled in the living room environment. And after this kind of brief readjustment, there's a turning point in the narrative. The baby picks up a blue ring, observes it innocently, and then bites down on it with drool falling down onto the floor. It's kind of gross, but kind of cute, and if you've seen a baby play, very natural. But then it is immediately followed by a reaction shot of Tinny switching from happy to scared, complete with another plume wiggle. And that's the moment when the baby, in Tinny's eyes, changes from an innocent to a threat. This baby is not a friend to toys, and Tinny realizes that he could be the next victim. And kind of introduces the central concept of the film, which is what is a baby's behavior like in the eyes of a toy. And this begins also the middle part of the narrative with Tinny attempting to avoid and run away from the baby, a very natural kind of self-preservation response. and then it's punctuated by the baby shaking the blue ring violently. So it's just to kind of add insult to injury. Now he's not only behaving like a threat, he it's almost like it's directed towards Tinny, and the game is on. Um, so there's a second sequence after this to further cement the baby as an antagonist as opposed to an ally in Tinny's eyes. First, the baby picks up the beads that were sitting around the baby toys in the initial opening shot. It's a Chekhov's gun. If the idea that you place a gun is going to go off, those beads are the very innocent Pixar version of that. You place beads in the opening shot, they are going to get used. And in this world, they are as equally threatening as a gun. Um, so the baby picks them up and shakes them just like he does for the blue ring, and they go flying across the room. And this sets up a really great gag where Tinny has to shield himself from the huge oncoming beads with just his accordion. That's all he has to work with. And we get this kind of perspective of what would be kind of cute and innocent and non-threatening, that because we're coming from Tinny's eyes and he's so small, this is actually terrifying. He has these giant beads flying at him. And when the plume goes off, we kind of, once again, fear lives in that plume. So we know what's being expressed when that shakes. And it's kind of, again, the bead strikes it and therefore just makes it even worse. It makes it vibrate. And it's meant for a laugh. This is all meant for a laugh. It's really funny. But it's also to kind of further emphasize how threatening this baby is to a toy. It's all kind of one shared goal. And not only in this world is there a monster baby, there are killer bees. So this is followed by a moment when you think that the baby is about to start crying. You have this kind of, he stops babbling, he pauses, and then he winds up, and then the joke is that he sneezes. So this is an important moment, even though it seems kind of small and unnecessary, but it is a break of the montage of the baby behaving like a monster, and therefore kind of functions like the baby's babble in order to remind us of the child's true nature. So if we've been so engrossed in Tinny's perspective and seeing this baby as a monster, this reminds us that we're human and supposed to kind of love this baby. And it's adorable, it's funny, and again, it reminds us that babies can and will cry. So not only does it kind of remind us of our humanity, it'll become important later on at the film's second turning point because the baby will cry. So it's getting us prepped for that moment. And it builds sympathy for the baby who kind of risks losing that inherent lovable nature when he becomes a monster. So we need to have sympathy for this baby. We have to have a bit of stored up sympathy for it in order for the rest of the narrative to work. So it's just making sure that all the different elements of our emotional alignment are getting set in place.